Okay, good morning, everybody. It's 8:30. It's time to call the meeting of February 4th to order. And our first item is to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Citizens to be heard. Looks like we have no citizens to be heard in the audience today, so we'll move to the approval of the bills and vouchers.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Approval of minutes from January 28th, board meeting.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Okay, at this time, we will be going, as our agenda shows, we will be going into closed session for labor negotiation strategies with our Human Resource Director, Darren Brook. Do we need a motion to close?
Move to close. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Okay. All right. Next we have up here, we have a little action to take based on our meeting here.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we grant the highway employees a 3-year contract, approve the 3-year contract at a 222.
Second.
For 14, 15, and 16.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right. Thank you, Darren.
All right, thank you.
You should take these with you too, Darren, if you want to. Okay, next up, our 8:45 item, we have our County Assessor Nancy Gunderson, and she has a couple of items here. One is Assessor's Office Abatement Policy Amendment, and to schedule for Board of Appeal and Equalization and open book meetings. Good morning, Nancy. Whenever you're ready.
I was looking at our abatement policy as far as what's done through the assessor's office, and I see the last time that it was probably reviewed or amended was back in 1997. There was a couple of items that I was hoping that we could discuss today, and I have a recommendation to make a couple of changes on our existing policy. One of those items is under the homestead abatements. On your app resolution or the policy here, I put it in red what I'm proposing to change some wording. And one of the main things is currently staff has done 2 mailings. One with the initial mailing, usually we get a recorder's office transfer listing that shows new ownership and mail applications based on that. And if we don't get it returned, then we usually go with a certified mail. Presently, certified mail is about $5.65 a piece, a mailing. And we felt that there's so many avenues now for taxpayers to get their homestead application in. First of all, they have up until December 15th to file. They have ownership and occupancy by December 1st also. They get either an equalization notice and a truth and taxation notice that would indicate a classification on it. And we also do a advertisement or posting in the Fargo form, because we feel that's the largest readership, indicating that deadline to make application. So we would like to not send certified mail anymore. It is costly. You know, if you have 100 of them, it's getting closer to $600 just to mail those, and that doesn't include the time or that type of thing. So that's one of the items. And the second one is under the last bullet. And this deals with in cases where there might be some unintentional fire damage and things like that. Right now, the county has the ability to grant abatements or valuation changes if there are those types of situations on any class of property. I'm recommending that possibly we narrow that down to just be residential, not residential, homesteaded property, house and attached garage. If that should be the situation, it has to be over 50% damaged and unintentional, basically.
So what's the change that you're...
Right now it's open to all property types. And I would like to narrow that scope down to a house, garage, and that valuation only.
Okay, so who would not receive it then?
Like
Example.
a commercial entity, a large ag farm building, say a poultry house or something like that. It's just narrowing that scope down to the residents, basically.
Well, I guess I'm wondering why we need to do that.
I was looking at some other applications and abatement policies from surrounding counties, and there's a mix. Some of them just do that, and some of them leave it open to all property types.
So when there's a significant, and obviously before they can even qualify for some sort of relief, it has to exceed 50% damage, right? You know, so it would appear to me, though, that, and then how long does that go?
Typically it's for that following assessment year, and then we'd look at it for that next assessment year. So if the damage occurred during this calendar year, we would look at the number of months that it's damaged and change that valuation for this current assessment year, which is then payable the next year. If there hasn't been any repair or anything, then the following January 2nd is either when that structure would totally come off the books or be a new structure in its place. So it's basically 1 year's taxes where they would see a benefit or help.
Done.
I guess I still don't understand. If you had a major loss on any property that's taxed, why would you not give them a reduction if they've lost 50% of it in a...
You certainly can, because it does allow you to do that. My recommendation was just to narrow that scope slightly.
I don't know if I can support that. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
If a business then loses their
Correct.
business, you're not going to lower their taxes?
No, it was just looking at the residents.
I mean, we can have a lot of problems in ag areas, and it's, you know, I think about it, Nancy, from the business standpoint, and if they have damage that exceeds 50%, most of those businesses still have to try to deal with their employees, who could then be unemployed for a period of time while things are going on, and it would seem to me that we would want to try to help and encourage some relief to help them sooner get back to where they were. And I don't know that this helps accomplish that. So
I need to hear a rationale why you think it's important to do this. Just to save us money? Is it?
I think the impact that it could have to the local jurisdictions is big.
in terms of
the loss.
of lost taxes coming in.
Yeah. And I was just looking at what other surrounding counties were doing, and it was a mix. And I was just looking at it from a person's residence as far as helping them.
Yeah, I understand that there could be by reducing you get a significant commercial property and you have to grant them some sort of a 1-year waiver. You could be, you take a look at Anheuser-Busch or something, or American Crystal, you're certainly talking about a lot of money, but the other side of that is just what it does economically to everything else.
Will it encourage businesses to just not rebuild? I mean, I'm afraid of that, too.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
We don't want
And
to
you don't want
encourage that.
Yeah.
Or move.
Or move, yeah.
So I guess I'm always one that likes to see where there's opportunities to save where we can, but I don't think I like where the savings goes on this one, but because I think the benefits of doing it, of assisting in a 1-year write-down, out exceed the costs. That's just my opinion. So.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I wanted to talk about the first one too. Now, it's just a certified letter. You're still going to give notices,
Correct.
so it simply wouldn't be the reminder certified
Right.
letter. Okay.
We'll do the initial mailing and a second notice, but we're going to strike, we would like to strike doing certified mail. Because we feel there's so many other avenues out there where they are being informed. And a lot of closing agencies and title companies, they do have the new party sign off on like a small form that indicates that you must go here and there for filing of homestead. So they certainly are aware.
Nancy, when you send the first notice out, that goes out first class, and then if they don't receive it or they're no longer at that address, it does come back,
Yes,
right?
it does. Yes, it
And
does.
that then also triggers you to try another mechanism to get it to them. Okay.
Typically, when there's a transfer made on every document, there needs to be where a tax statement needs to be mailed. So that's the address that goes into the tax system through the auditor's office, and that's usually what we do our first mailing based on that.
I see these different things, and it just happened, an experience with myself when my mother passed away in October, and she lives in Fargo, and her tax statements went out, and they ended up in La La Land because nobody returned them. It's sitting in some mailbox someplace where she no longer lives, and there was no forwarding. And I happen to know, of course, with my involvement with county government and when taxes are due, so I called Cass County and I said I didn't receive it, and so they sent me a copy of it. But not everybody is up and is privy to that type of stuff like we are. And, so I don't want to, I just want to make sure we're not getting ourselves into something where it's one less avenue for the taxpayer that ultimately is going to be coming in here asking for relief for penalties. So that's my issue with it. But.
My question on the, if I understood right, you're saying, I understand the extra work for your office. That part is legitimate. But otherwise, you're talking it's like $600?
Well, if you mailed 100.
Yeah, is that approximately what we do?
No, it's usually more than that.
Okay. Because, $600, if it solves just a couple people coming in complaining about that it's probably worthwhile. But
And it isn't any less work because we do send a second notice anyway, but the cost of...
For the cost of it.
Yeah.
Wait.
I'll be supporting our assessor's recommendations on each of these.
All right.
On both of these?
Yes.
Any particular reason that you could convince us?
She's put a lot of work into this, and I assume she knows what she's doing in her position, and she has her reasons, and I think they're legitimate reasons, and I'll support her.
Okay, I guess I certainly at this point do not feel comfortable supporting the one that
The local option.
that takes into more where you're just your single-family dwelling and garage. I think we owe it to our ag industry and to our commercial industry as well to be there for them if they have you lose 50% of what you got, it's a catastrophic deal. And we need to be there to try to help them get back on their feet. And so I won't be supporting that one. On this other one, I guess my issue there becomes as long as we're really confident that these people are getting their notification. You talked about, well, some gets in the form. Well, not everybody gets the form. So all of a sudden you start ripping into all these things and you find that a significant portion of the population doesn't get this and it doesn't get that. And so they're down to maybe one or two things. I wouldn't mind giving this a try and then see what comes out of it. In terms of what I think we all dread here, and I want to be real frank with it, is when we have to start coming in and seeing these people saying that they want to have their tax penalties and interest waived because they didn't understand the process or they didn't receive the proper notification. We hear it every year, all the time. And I just hope that what we're doing here wouldn't escalate that into more people doing that. That's just my fear. But I don't disagree with what you want to do there, but I am concerned with that. So, but it's what the board wishes.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think it's worth a try. I guess the bottom line is we can always change it back if we find that it causes us problems, and if it's a means of, saving what may be, a certain amount of money, I think it's worth a try. So I'd make a motion for that change.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second
For the first.
Right.
for the first bullet change regarding the mailings. Any further discussion on that motion?
Well, I guess I would just say, too, after you've got 2 notices, if you haven't done anything yet, a certified letter probably is not going to do it either.
The certified letter, what that does is
It just shows that you...
Gives us evidence
That's
that...
proof that
yeah.
they did
That
receive
they
it.
did receive it, but we got proof very good. In most cases, it would have been returned, I would say.
Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we not change the second recommendation, simply because of the extreme hardship it could cause our business people, farmers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Aye.
Okay, that's 4-1 for the record. Okay. Nancy?
And the next item on the agenda is our schedule for 2014 with our open book and local boards of appeal and equalization. Basically, I'm just looking for a motion to accept this because of county equalization being an evening meeting on the schedule for June 17th.
Okay, and so so the June 17th meeting, there's all these other meetings that have to happen prior to that, is that what
Yes.
you're saying? And so you're establishing that schedule?
Yes.
For all the open book meetings with the townships and all that?
Yes,
Okay.
for notification to them.
And you have that schedule? I didn't.
On the last page.
Oh.
Of what she handed off to us.
I didn't have it as part of it. Oh, okay. Okay,
I'll
so,
move we approve that.
all right, we have a
Second.
proposed schedule, a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our 8:55 item is the Alderon Holdings LLC request for tax abatement, and this is Planning and Zoning, Planning Environmental Programs, Tim Magnuson. And we're back again. We had our public hearing on this last week.
Yes, this is not a public hearing.
Yes.
Well, I guess we had a public hearing last week. We had some discussion. I presented to you this morning an updated list of scenarios as to how the county could deal with the Alderon request. The request I had wrong last week. I had it 10 years for 100%. It's actually 5 years for 100%, which reduces their actual request down to about $95,500, excuse me, almost $96,000 if it were to be 100% for 5 years. Some of the other scenarios on there were the 180, 60, 40, 20, which would provide them about $57,500 worth of abatement over 5 years. 100% for 2 years, 60, 40, 20, $61,400. As you go to scenario 4, that's 2 years at 100, 80, 60, 40, 72, 9, and then if you wanted to keep all the numbers in the mix, you go 6 years, 2 years at 100, then 80, 60, 40, 20. And that was $76,700 of approximate abatement. In the discussion at the subcommittee, I think the one that we had talked about that we thought was probably the most appropriate was scenario 3, which was 2 years at 100%, and 60, 40, and 20 for the remaining 3 years. That provides them with $61,000 worth of abatement, which is about two-thirds of what they're asking for in their original request. So I guess the matter is up for discussion.
Yeah, I think during the course of our meeting, I think as we reviewed all of these different things and we looked at scores and all these other things, we're going to probably have business that come down the road in the future that are going to have higher scores and lower scores. And so where do you put this company in and where you think it's fair? And that was part of the conversation we had, and we felt that scenario 3 would be a fair place to go with this particular request.
My understanding too is that the first year, for year 1 isn't until is it 15? I mean, there's an extra year.
Say, did Nancy leave the room?
No, she's still there.
Nancy? Isn't it my understanding that the year 1 in these scenarios is actually out a year? So there's a year without tax at all, isn't there?
I believe so, because of the timing of all of this.
Yeah.
And
so there's a sense in which it's actually 3 years with 100%. Yeah.
this one,
Yeah, and this all the right in.
Well, they'd all be, year 1 would be the same for,
yeah, and I think this was then based on a full completion value, so January 2nd, 2014 assessment.
so then it's
So then
tax
we pay
payable in 15
Yes.
would be
Would be when
year
this
1?
would get taxed, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Brian.
And also, as we consider these, whatever scenario you decide on, that it could be for future years, so that we don't have to, I think it's payable 14 right now, and they are paying 14, aren't you? Were you taxed
Well, the
13 and
building-
payable 14?
I didn't
My
think so.
point
Yeah.
being, the building is up and completed, and it would be better if this is into the future. And these are approximate amounts, so that it would be payable 15, and they'd still get the break, but it would be, and I was going to ask Lori about this, she wasn't here yesterday, and maybe Nancy would know, if it complicates the system, it gives them the break, but, we've already set budgets, we've calculated what we're going to collect this year, and it would be easier to make that spread. It would be more accurate, not that it has to be easy for us.
When you say payable, it's when we would pay the incentive back, right? That's what
That
you're
is
referring to.
correct. That is correct. Yes, and because we haven't collected for that
Right.
to pay back, so.
Yeah, because if we were to pay it back in 14, we'd be up against a gun that we didn't have that in our
collected
budget.
for. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so.
Why scenario number 5 for 6 years, or what? Can we go 6 years or more? Can we go as many years as we
You
want?
can go as many years as you want. I think there is actually a maximum. I don't think you can exceed 20, but I don't think there's any consideration at the county board of going that far. The scenario 6 was just taking it out and including all of the percentages to include 80, 60, 40, and 20 behind the two 100s. So.
And again, we had to take a look at what future types of requests might come in too, and how we're going to be fair. It's how many jobs are generated, and a lot of things that go into play in terms of the equation that comes up with this, and that's where we felt that scenario 3 in this one would be a reasonable one that would allow for something larger to receive something in a bigger incentive, and something smaller receive something smaller.
A lot of discussion has gone into this, and the committee is recommending 3,
Scenario
right?
3, yeah.
I move scenario 3.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for scenario 3. Do we have any other discussion on the motion? Frank?
Well, I look at this company, it's probably because of them that we started EDC. And then we decided that when they applied, they didn't get anything because EDC wasn't here yet. But had this company, we had EDC when this company applied, when we look at what they got, they went from 1 to 40 employees. I mean, how many companies have come in Clay County have done that? Not too many of them, and, they scored very high in the program. I guess, I'd like to see scenario number 5 go in there, but, because I just feel this company is the one that's why we're here with this EDC program, and I would just like to give them, like I say, if we would have had this program when they first applied, what would have we done for them? Would have we went with scenario number 3? Seeing that they're going to come build a building, go from 1 to 40 employees, is that what we would have done for them, a new company? If another company comes in here, says we're going to bring 40 employees into Clay County, is that what we're going to look at, scenario number 3? So I'd just like to see the scenario number 5.
Well, and I speak from those of us that were on the committee and talked about it, and we didn't treat this as an after-the-fact deal. We treated this based on the merits of what was done as it was being done today, and again, we're trying to establish some sort of a ranking system here. So what do we do if we end up having somebody who wants to have 200 jobs come into Clay County?
Yeah.
So now you've set the bar at this one at scenario 5 at a pretty significant number.
Well, if I remember last week, it was said that they scored very high.
Yeah, they did.
They scored higher than the other project that we've dealt with recently.
And we weighed those things when we looked at it, that, we're doing more here than we did for the last business that we did, and we based that on, all those circumstances. So.
The previous project was awarded 180, 60, 40, 20 for 5 years. Scenario 3 gives them 100% for 2 years.
Okay, you have a comment for us? And maybe you can go to the microphone.
Okay, I just have this little handout I'd just like to go through quickly with you guys.
All right. And keep in mind, we do have a motion and a second on the floor. So. All right, do you want to restate your name for the public and let you go?
Dan Sherping with Alderon Industries. And just want to, last week, we asked for 100% abatement for 5 years. And this weekend, I was just going through my thought process, how I got there. And I just want to present that to you guys, our thought process. On page number 3, I was thinking, what is tax abatement? It is to encourage capital investment in the area, and it adds value, and it helps to facilitate a project that might not stand alone without abatement. Also, more importantly, it's to help facilitate future growth, and not all companies have the same growth potential. I know the project that was given abatement near Holly. That's a great project. We're going to use their services through time, and it's great for the community of Holly. However, I don't think their job growth potential is the same as Alderon. We moved to Holly 10 years ago with 0 employees, and we're up to 40, and that's not our limit. Our limit is 100, 200 employees. We're such a small company still that our growth potential is unlimited. So I think we have to look at that. On page 4, I state not all tax abatements are equal. And so I'm just comparing ours to the other project. I would say we pay a higher wage, we have better benefits, and we're going to increase employment. So I think if you look at us compared to them, they're a great project, but I think the potential with our abatement in Clay County is a lot greater. And then on page 5, Alderaan does not compete with any other employers in Clay County. We only compete for employees, which will help drive up, wages, benefits. And a lot of our jobs are, production managers, engineers, marketing people. It's not all, production jobs. We have a lot of higher paid jobs, college degree jobs, and we'll be looking at to employ them. Then on page 6, I just took our OSHA log. That's the thing we have to do for the government. You have to track how many hours you have, and I just divided it by 2,080 hours to put it on some type of full-time equivalent. So during the recession in the 2008-2009 period, we were kind of just holding our own with the economy bad. Like I said, we moved to Hawley in 2003 with no employees. So by 2008, we got up to 12. And currently, we're at 40 full-time employees, and we're still looking to hire people. So, so on page 7, Alderaan does need a tax abatement because we're a manufacturing company, and we compete with goods, I've mentioned it several times, that come in from low-cost nations. We aren't competing only with competitors down the road. We have companies that build the same product as we have in low-cost nations, bring them into the United States, sell them cheaper than we can build them here. And that's the reality we're facing. Also, we are still increasing employees, offer competitive pay and benefits. So conclusion, the reason why I'm asking for a 5-year, 100% tax abatement is it's a temporary delay in taxes for Clay County. I mean, if we, the way I look at it is we're helping Clay County. We're employing 40 people. If we would have built in Fargo, the tax revenue wouldn't have been here anyway. And we're just asking for temporary tax abatement, but that will have a lasting impact on Alderaan Industries. We started out with nothing 14 years ago, and we built it to this with no investors, no family money, just working 7 days a week, and we're just starting to hit our stride now. And I think over the next year, the best history of future employment, I think, is just look at the recent past, and we've been growing, and we're looking to add more employees, and we're just asking Clay County to help us in that endeavor. And as Mr. Gross mentioned, we're up to 40 employees, and that's not our limit. And the building wasn't designed just to have 40 employees. It was designed to be, 100, 200 employees, and I'm sure we're going to get there. And we're just asking for some help from Clay County. And I think if you compare us to other people that will ask for it, I think, how many companies can grow from 0 to 40 in 14 years? And I know over the next 14 we'll be adding more than 40 because your ability to grow is easier when you're bigger, unfortunately. So as when you're a small company, you're struggling. So the future is bright, and things are going well, and we just want to keep this momentum going. And that's the rationale for 100% for 5 years.
Okay.
And that's,
thank you.
If you have any questions.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second on.
Just
on the
a
table.
comment, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I kind of agree with Frank's proposal that adding the 80% for 1 year in there it may be good for all of us. And certainly appreciate the business and the growth, and we want to encourage others to to follow suit. So I would prefer also scenario number 5.
Mr. Chair, I made the motion, it's been seconded. I'm not going to call for the question. However, if you gentlemen would like to consider another scenario, I would withdraw the motion. So why don't we discuss that? Any more discussion on this? Right, your call.
Well, you have to agree to withdraw your motion.
I will withdraw my motion at this time.
Okay, does that agree with you? All right.
And then we'll
In that case, I will make a motion to do scenario number 5.
A second.
Okay, now we have a motion for scenario number 5. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? I do have to raise the issue that we are now going quite a bit different than what the committee had recommended by researching. Now, did we actually have it right with scenario 3? Maybe not. I have concerns with going scenario 5 because of what future is to come, and we have very little to base this brand-new program that we have. If we were going to make a change, I would have been more comfortable with going to scenario 4 as opposed to scenario 5. And it gets into the dollars here too, that we're making a commitment to these dollars that we're going to be paying out, and we still have to come up with ways, along with everything else that we do, to pay for those dollars. And so quite frankly, I thought $61,000 was significant help to them, and going to 76 is really good. Wayne?
Mr. Chair, when you call for the vote, would you call the roll, please?
I will absolutely do that. So, anyway, I think going from scenario 3 to scenario 5 throws caution into the wind of our committee and our whole procedure in determining what these abatements should be. So I will be voting against the motion. Any other discussion? If not, we'll call for the roll. Do you want to take a vote?
Okay.
Just call each board member on their vote, yes or no.
Just start.
You can start with me. Okay, I vote no.
Jonathan.
I vote yes.
No.
Wayne.
No.
And Frank.
Yes.
Okay, so we've had one withdrawal, we've had one failed motion, and here we sit.
Mr. Chair, I move scenario 3.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to go back to scenario 3, a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
would you have the roll called again, please?
I will. I'll see if there's any more discussion on scenario 3 now that the motion has been remade. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll call for the roll again on this one.
I would vote yes.
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 No. Okay, that motion carries 4-1. Okay, we'll move on to our next item.
Mr. Chair, we will have a resolution drafted.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
For your signature.
And, Mr. Chair, and I'm assuming the motion will read, implemented in a timely fashion then in the future, so that we do not try to implement that for 2014. It'll be 24. Thank you.
That was the intent of the discussion.
That's what I thought.
Oh,
Okay, so we'll move on. Our next item is the Dave, our approval of right-of-way acquisition of SAP 14652-13 and Trunk Highway 9 and County Road 56. Morning, Dave.
Morning. This is to secure the one parcel that we need to complete our grading project on Highway 52, just from the city limits of Barnesville up north to County Road 56. There's an existing trunk highway right-of-way there, so we were able to fit within that existing footprint, all with the exception of, as you go north up the viaduct or under the underpass there a little bit. So we need about 1.5 acres of land. What we did is we kind of used a two-way approach to this. We took a look at our existing appraisal on Highway 19 for non-tillable land, and that came in at $12.50 an acre. And then we kind of run that by the assessor's office, and she also concurred that she felt that was still fair. I know it's not how we normally do it, but in conversation with the landowner, I believe he's also acceptable to the offer. We're not going to run into a condemnation type of a scenario anyway. So I'd like to get approval on the right-of-way price for non-tillable land.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? No? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Request to fill public health nurse position. Kathy McKay. Good morning, Kathy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I brought Kathy Anderson with as well. She's the nursing director for these programs. Our request is before you to replace a public health nurse that has resigned, and it's a full-time position in our home visiting programs. This is a grade 18, step 4, excuse me. The current nurse is, and so of course we'd be hiring the same grade, and hopefully within step 1 to 3, depending on the candidates we receive.
Mr. Chair, move to approve the request.
You have a motion?
Second.
Further discussion?
Kathy, this should actually, lower our cost a bit, because you'd be hiring somebody at a lower step. Is that it?
And unless they certainly come in with public health and home visiting experience, then they would move up on the grade, but hopefully we'd still hire within grade 1 through 3, or step 1 through 3.
It shouldn't be an increase anyway.
Right, exactly. So we should have some savings.
So isn't it the policy that if it's step A to C, that they do this, and then anything above that?
I'd have to come back to the board for approval,
Back to the
correct.
board? Okay.
That's correct.
I think that's kind of been the standard procedure, hasn't it? Okay, very good. So, did we have a discussion? We didn't vote, did we?
We haven't voted.
Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Okay.
You're lucky you had Kathy with to help you with that.
I know, thank goodness.
All right, Mr. Berg, you're going to talk to us, we're going to consider resolution in support of legislation allowing counties to designate their county website to publish public notices.
Jenny, would you mind joining?
Certainly.
Good morning, Jenny.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
You know this is a tough topic when we have to ask our attorney to sit alongside here.
At least you don't have the sheriff on the other side.
He's out in the hallway. I told him yesterday, I sent out an email that I was going to be gone for a couple days, and Bill writes back and says, "Does that mean I'm in charge?" And I said, "You're always in charge." What are you talking about? Well, what you have before you is a resolution that was sent out by AMC, and I did try to supply a little bit of additional information yesterday and I have the bill in front of me that was introduced last year. I printed that off yesterday afternoon. If you want to pass that around, appreciate that. And what the resolution is asking for, it's asking for support for AMC to show at the legislature that counties and cities want the flexibility to limit some of the advertising that they do for bids in this case, or other documents. It doesn't change everything on it, but if you remember, when we went through this at the first of the year, we were really kind of contemplating how much advertising that we should do, and should we try to go with the website, and we feel that the statute is pretty clear on what we can advertise, and this legislation would gain a little bit of ground on the ability to publish things, and in this case, one example is bids on our site, but you'd still have to advertise in the paper that the bid is going to be on the website. So I think this isn't too damaging. It does show support for it, and we talked about this at the beginning of the year. We went through quite an ordeal to do the publishing this year. It doesn't eliminate the publications of it, is on the right, that I interpret on this. And I guess I'd really like, Mr. Chair, if Jenny would weigh in on this from a legal standpoint of the changes that might occur because of this, or could occur because of this. Maybe that's a better way to state it.
Certainly. Well, from my perspective, support of this resolution would advance the cause in the sense that we wouldn't do away with the publishing, but we maybe could minimize the column line that we are advertising. So it's going to utilize the paper to point you to the website, where we can probably do a much better job advertising for these bids, put a lot more information out there. In my opinion, you know, the statutes at this point just have not caught up with the technology that we have available to us. And I know we have to bear in mind that not every citizen has access to the technology, but I do think this is a good balance. Because if someone sees something in the paper that's open for a bid, they could take steps to go looking further for that if it was something they were interested in. You know, places like the public library have public access terminals. We have one here in the courthouse in the law library. So I do think it's a pretty nice compromise. We're not throwing the newspaper publication out the window. We're not, you know, going to that extreme, but we're trying to strike a balance between what is reasonable and what will serve the needs of the citizens.
And Mr. Chair, if we may just reiterate the issue that the legislation that is being introduced and requested allows a county or a city to have the option to may. It doesn't say that it's not. If you still choose to advertise things, you can do so. And I think this is kind of an interesting statement here. It says that that Governor Dayton has called for in 2014 as this being the unsession in which the legislature makes government better, faster, simpler, and more efficient while eliminating old and outdated rules. And I think that's what Jenny has just stated here as well. So I think it's a step in the right direction without eliminating and changing things in one great swoop. We'd ask for your support on that.
And it's a positive move. I'd move the resolution.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Well, I guess I would just say, a lot of times we say, well, not everybody has a computer and stuff like that. Not everybody gets the paper either, so that's we're in the same thing there, so I would support this.
Well, I certainly support the idea of, you know, that it still leaves each county to do what they think is best for them. And, you know, so when we get into if this is passed, we can get into our own conversation on what's best for Clay County, and I see nothing wrong with that. So a motion to support the resolution at the state levels, I think is fine. Do we have it?
Yeah, we have a
Oh, we should.
motion,
Okay,
second.
we do. Okay, all right. All right, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. All right, our next item is appointment of county recorder, county administrator Brian Berg, and I've got a deal here that I'm going to pass around for you. You have one, Brian?
I don't. I gave you all the copies. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
And Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you. I know that you didn't turn it over to me, but it was yourself and Commissioner Whalen and I that met on this, and you chaired the committee, so to speak, and I think whatever you want to do on it.
Yeah,
I think you can address it.
I'm certainly talking, and if Commissioner Whalen wants to give his opinion too, that's perfectly fine. We did meet with, first off, I want to let everybody know that that I had asked Brian to contact everybody in the recorder's office to see who might have interest in the position. So it wasn't as though we went and we just said we only wanted 2 people out there. We suggested that everybody have an opportunity if they wanted to come and do it. With that in mind, we did have 2 candidates come forward, and we did meet with those candidates and had a really good interview with both of them. They were both very, very highly qualified candidates, and by the time it was all said and done, we felt that the current Chief Deputy Recorder, Diane Streifel, would be the good fit to fill the remainder of Bonnie's term that would go into effect on March 5th of 2014. So, and again, we had 2 very, very qualified candidates that answered questions very well.
Mr. Chair, well, if she is appointed today, would her salary be comparable to what Bonnie is now receiving?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think that is something that we have to look at. In the salary plan that we have, even for the elected officials, we have to look at what the statute says, and it says that your salary is commensurable with the experience and qualifications and different things along that line. So that would have to be a next step. We're really not setting the salary today or appointing it, and
So that's not part of today's...
No.
that is not part of it.
All I need to know.
Okay, sorry.
All right.
Did we open this up just to the recorder's office and not to anybody else?
That's correct. And the reason we did that is we felt that because all of those that are working there have the necessary and important experience that would be required to step in immediately to handle all of the critical components of a recorder's office, and to go outside of that on this short-term basis, we felt could have had its challenges, let's put it that way. So
Okay, so we're looking at just appointment to December 31st.
That's correct.
2014.
That's correct.
And I think that's a good point, Frank, but, I mean, typically, that's what we would do. We look at internal candidates. If we would have found that we didn't feel we had an internal candidate suitable to fill that, complete the term, we would have probably opened it up to outside candidates. But I think in this case, we were fortunate that we had 2 excellent internal candidates to choose from, and so therefore, I think it works out best for the county.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's very specific responsibilities in the recorder's office. It's really important that you don't have somebody inexperienced, which always could happen at an election, but this gives us the opportunity to make sure that the person that we name in the temporary position is qualified, and so I would support the recommendation here. I think that's a good way to move. And this person and anybody else who might be interested will have to file this spring for election next fall if they're interested in the permanent position.
That's correct.
Okay, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Brian.
With one possibility of exception, if the legislature does act in time on making it an appointed process, then we would, then we'd look to you folks if you'd want to do that or not.
If they act this year yet, it would be effective July 1st or whatever.
It could be. It's got to be awful
Or at the
quick.
end of the term is actually.
Well, no, see, Mr. Chair, if I may, the session doesn't go into session until February 25th, so they will have to act on it, get it to the governor's desk for a signature within probably the first 30 days, because it has to be a 60-day process. A reverse referendum has to be petitioned, and you have to allow 60 days for that within the county. So it could happen for those two appointed positions that we are seeking, auditor, treasurer, and the recorders. So, but yes, if that doesn't happen that quickly, then they'll have to file.
My understanding is that if they act on it this year and it all is completed, it still would not take effect till the end of the person's term.
Yes, which is 10 months away. So,
right.
Yeah. Yeah, they would serve out the 10 months.
I'll move to appoint Diane Streifel as county recorder effective March 5th, 2014.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Okay, I just want to also say thank you to both of those individuals for applying for that job. Okay, we'll move on to our committee reports and county administrator update. Who's going to start with? Frank, we start with you today?
As well, I got no report.
You got no reports? Okay, Wayne?
No reports, Mr. Chair.
No reports. Grant?
Well, we just went through the recorder situation. I had that last week, and then I had a MRCC meeting and kind of went over what some of the issues are for the counties for this upcoming legislative session. And so if you would look over those, and maybe next week we can just decide which of those are important for our county, and we can submit those to Dan Larson, the executive director. I think MRCC is growing, and so I think one of the things I'm going to suggest in the future is that there's a lot of diversity now as we grow in what some of the interests are in rural counties, and so I think it may be beneficial to MRCC to maybe form, at least for legislative purposes, maybe 2 or 3 different groups that look at what their priorities are in their part of the state, and then MRCC can maybe address the most important ones for counties where agricultural issues are important, or the counties that have lakes and woods, they have some different interests. So, but that's something we talked about at the meeting, and we'll be talking more about in the future. And then yesterday, I went on the diversion tour with the general from the Corps of Engineers that was here, and he seemed, pretty impressed. He's got a pretty impressive name for a general, General Duke DeLuca, so it sounds like a general to me, so that was it for me.
Okay, John?
Okay, well, I was privileged to attend, courtesy of the Robert Woods Johnson grant, federal grant, to attend a public health meeting in San Diego, and it's a nationwide grant that brings people from all over the nation that are trying to encourage shared public health entities. And of course, ours fits beautifully into that when we're changing from a 2-county public health entity to a 4-county. Also in Minnesota, there's a number of others, Polk, Mahnomen, and Norman County were represented. And the counties just to the south, the 5 counties to the south of us were represented, as well as Renville and Candiota County were represented, and then an entity in the Twin Cities, 2 cities within the Hennepin County that were going to join their public health entities together as well. And then there's scattered around the country a number of others. So probably was, I would guess there was 100 people present at this gathering, and had an opportunity to share what we're doing as well as hear what others are doing, and to share problems and what doesn't work, what has worked, all those kinds of things. It was a very, very good conference, and there'll be one more meeting of the conference coming up sometime next fall, and so that'll be the 3rd. I went to the one in Kansas City last year, and this one in San Diego, and another one will be coming up later. But it really is, I think, a good move, and we're seeing some real growth. Some of the places have problems just that we haven't even ever considered because of the difficulty in county and other governmental units working together. Minnesota, we've got a history of trying to do this, so that's why I think we showed so well with the representation there. But, so I thank you for the opportunity to have attended that.
Okay. Okay, the only meeting I had last week, or the activity I had, was the interview with the recorders, as Grant said, so I had nothing else. So we'll move on to Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, last Tuesday, we mentioned at the board meeting, at the end of the board meeting, that we would be attending a meeting with 6 township officers out, or 6 townships out in the eastern end of the county Tuesday night, and I know Commissioner Gross was there. But their main issue, and we discussed this a couple weeks ago with Highway, was the conditions of the roads. And frankly, there was some concern this year with the ground drifting and the hardness of the snow and the warm-ups we've had about maintenance. And we listened very intently to those. We did have one township speak up and said, boy, we've never had such good service on our roads this year. So that was nice to hear. But we did talk about the unusual weather conditions, but then we also had a real good discussion, and I think we should probably carry it on our highway tracking, and that is the volume of roads that our highway does maintain in the winter months. We maintain roughly 800 miles of county roads and very close to 800 miles of township roads. That's 1,600 miles of road. And then if you just double that for 2 lanes, if they're at one pass up and back, you got 3,200 miles to go over. The foreman, in talking with the township, said that some of our people exceeded 12 hours and over 300 miles on one of their snow trucks after a storm. That concerns me because think about that, driving 300 miles, you can get kind of tired and stressed. Can you imagine watching the shoulder and watching the center and watching oncoming traffic and watching ground blizzards and mailboxes and things for 300 miles? Boy, that's a long time. So, but if you gear up too much for it and then you have a nice winter, then what do you do? So, but I think we wanted to bring that back to the board that I thought we had a very good meeting, and I think they were very understanding of the situation. And we'll have more discussion, I'm sure, at the township meeting when we have that as well. In regards, it's been a tough winter out there. Surprisingly, we haven't received that much snow, but it's the kind of snow that we have and the conditions. So I thought it was really good. Recorder's process has already been dealt with. I did attend a meeting last Friday we had over at the Law Enforcement Center, and it involved public health and our social services and Lakes and Prairies and Salvation Army, Red Cross, Sheriff's Office. Brian Green set it up, our emergency manager director. And it was talking about the propane shortages. And I don't know if the shortages is so much, but the shortages drove the price up a great deal. And there was really some horror stories as to what the prices are out there. Some are paying $4 and $5 a gallon right now for propane. That was $1.50. And then with these cold stretches that we had, and a point that Joe Peterson made was the fact that, these dealers will probably fill their tanks now, put in 150 gallons, 200. But if they don't receive payment, it's the next one that's going to really create probably the crisis and a life-threatening situation. So all the groups, First Link was there and will aid as a coordinator on this, but I think if everybody pays attention, what we don't need for the safety of our people is to have some person out there that's really set in their ways and is not going to accept any help and ends up freezing to death. That would be the worst case scenario. So they asked that we put out the word that people out there that are listening today should check on their neighbors. If they know somebody that has a little time getting out and getting around, call on them once in a while, check, maybe ask them about their propane, ask them what their levels are, and call for help if they get to that point. So I thought it was a real good meeting. We discussed a lot of things and how to approach that. Salvation Army and Red Cross are really gearing up to help, and I know there's been a 1-800 number at the state level, but what we were told there and what I've heard on the news and extracted it is, you call that number, they're going to refer you to the local entities for assistance. So it's going to come back on our shoulders. So I think we're prepared to handle that. Then we had several meetings, I guess, in regards to just some personnel concerns and issues and approaches. So it's, again, been a pretty busy week. So, and you noticed Vicki is taking a little bit of vacation today, so.
I thought she had an ankle.
Oh, I mean, I'll tell you what, she has trained Colleen so well that I'm sure we won't miss a beat.
Hey, Frank?
I guess I did forget that meeting I was at, and I guess at that meeting, I guess I was impressed that these 6 townships get together and discuss this thing, and I think they had a good discussion as far as, how they can work together, or what information, Dave Overbo was there along with Ryan and stuff. It was just, I thought it was a good thing for townships to do, to get together like that, sometimes in a small cluster, and just discuss things, what can they do to help each other out. We talked about the gravel bits coming up, how we probably do a county-wide bid, instead of just each individual township doing each thing, so overlooked that. So it was a good meeting.
All right. Jenny?
No, thank you.
Clean? All right, thank you. We're adjourned.